Hello! We will be continuing our discussion of the Axial Age and the important developments and places therein with the Persian Empire. Arguably the first multicultural large empire in the history of the world, and as we will see, one that establishes a template or a pattern for future empires to come. The Persian Empire lasts from about 550 to 330 BCE, emerging in our good friend and region of Mesopotamia, right here along the Tigris and the Euphrates River. It actually emerges in this sort of Persian homeland here, and then spreads out both eastward and westward, conquering the entire region from the Mediterranean to the Indus River. They ruled more through persuasion and the idea of mutual benefit than actual raw power. They tended to be a very diverse and tolerant empire. Like other contemporary empires during this time period, they did primarily rely on horses and archery to conquer areas and then to maintain their control. But importantly, they adapted ideas and cultural concepts from the areas that they conquered. The empire started and founded by Cyrus the Great. Generally, if you get the term the Great added after your name, you are important and remembered by history. He united the various disparate Persian tribes and was generally viewed as a benevolent or kind ruler who liberated the people from their local oppressive kings. The classic example of this is his liberation of the Jews. They were held in what is known as the Babylonian captivity by the king of Babylon, upon which there are hymns and poems and scriptures, and he comes, conquers Babylon, and frees them and allows them to go back to their homeland in Israel, for which he is praised and thanked in the Torah or the Old Testament of the Bible. His grandson actually is the peak ruler of the Persian Empire, and he is known as either Darius or, if you prefer, Darius the Great, who ruled or reigned from 521 to 486 BCE. He's shown here as a stone carving upon which he has a long inscription proclaiming his greatness. One quote of this is, "I am Darius, the great king, king of kings, the king of Persia, the king of countries." And this primary source is a handy insight into how he viewed himself as being very special and very awesome, right? But also, by calling himself the King of Kings, a phrase which is going to become more well known and more familiar to history going forward, but that acknowledges the existence of other kings. He is not the only king or the one king, he is king of kings. So he is greater than others, but also is acknowledging the existence and rule of these other kings. He ultimately works to unite 70 different ethnic groups across the entire span and region, different languages, different cultures, and backgrounds. And importantly, he builds on local traditions and local administration, as well as allowing the continuance of local customs. They impose their rule, they conquer people, but then they don't try and convert them or make them adapt to what they believe or teach. Under the Persian Empire, all peoples are viewed equally, if you are Persian or not Persian, and are well treated. Of course, as long as they were loyal to the king and weren't causing problems, right? And they paid tribute, right, in taxes or some form of goods to acknowledge the power and control of the king. But importantly, tribute was generally viewed as an honor and not a burden. It was an honor to be part of the empire and to pay tribute to the king of kings. One of the important cultural developments under the Persian Empire, which again was not enforced on their conquered people but was promoted, was their religion, Zoroastrianism. It shows clear influences of Judaism and will be an influence on Christianity, but again, they did not force people to convert to it. It is not quite monotheism, it is more of a dualism or a duality. It believes that there are two higher powers, one good and one evil, right? But importantly, it stresses free will. You can choose to do right or to do evil, and the importance of ethical behavior, to behave according to good ethics and good morals, to choose the right path as opposed to the wrong path. The priests or officials of Zoroastrianism are called magi, which, if you have heard or are familiar with the story of Jesus and his birth, the three wise men from the east, the three magi, it seems clear, are traveling from the remnants of the Persian Empire and are probably practitioners of Zoroastrianism. They also teach that there are rewards in the afterlife for the just, a happy, peaceful place of long life in perpetuity, and punishment in smoke and fire for the unjust. And if that sounds vaguely familiar to some of you, some of these ideas are an influence and are arguably adopted later by Christianity. Under Darius, the government of Persia is also going to establish a model for future empires to come. The vast expanse of the empire shown here on the map, from the border of Greece all the way to India and back to Egypt, is quite simply too large for one person to rule at their capital in Persepolis, right here. So they divided the empire up into provinces, which would be ruled by a governor, or in the Persian terminology, satrapies ruled by a satrap. These local governors of the provinces, shown here in black bold writing, were monitored by local military officials as well as tax collectors, and the first, so far as we know, spy system to make sure that they're governing correctly and paying the amount of taxes they should back to the capital at Persepolis. To monitor and to govern this vast empire, you need infrastructure or buildings or things to help you move around. Roads. They build a royal road from the trade ports on the Mediterranean through the heart of the Persian Empire, as well as a network of other roads shown here in red. Roads are super helpful for messages, for the postal system, of which they created the first one we know of, as well as for transporting the army when you need to. They had a standardized currency of one size coins printed and created with the head or face of the King of Kings on them, both to ensure good economic trade with one currency throughout the empire and as propaganda for who was actually in charge. They also had a uniform system of weights and measures. This seems kind of pointless to us now, but if you want to trade and each person has a different way of measuring things or weighing things, it's very hard to convert. If there's one system of weights and measures throughout the entire empire, trade and building and all types of things are much, much easier. Again, all of these key features will be developed and perfected by future empires, but are here for the first time, so far as we know, under the Persians. However, in spite of their vast expanse here in orange, there is conflict upon their borders, specifically with the little annoying disparate towns and city-states of Greece. Each one is sort of causing problems as people are traveling by boat and ship, spreading out after their collapse in the Bronze Age to repopulate and start new towns here on the edge of Persia, which they start to cause problems for the Persian Empire and the local government. One of these important moments of the conflict of Persia and Greece is known as the Battle of Marathon in 490 BCE. The simple answer here is that Athens had been causing problems for Persia, and so Persia decided to keep them in line. They send an invading army to Greece, and you can see what happens right here. The Persians attack in red. The Athenians trick them by retreating in the middle, drawing back the Persians, and then crushing them from three sides. This is unexpected. Persia has the largest, most powerful empire and army in the world. They did not expect to lose to a bunch of ragtag Greeks. Incidentally, it is from this battle that we get the name and the term Marathon. Here is the town of Here's the town itself, which gives the battle its name. To carry news and messages, people had to run by foot through Greece. It was too hilly and mountainous. And so one Greek messenger had run 200 miles to bring news to the battlefield at Marathon. Upon winning, he was given another message to run back to Athens and tell them, we have won. He ran from Marathon to Athens, announced the amazing victory, and promptly dropped dead. And the length from Marathon to Athens is 26 miles. After the embarrassing defeat of the army of Darius, his son Xerxes planned another invasion to recapture his honor. 10 years later, a group of Persians, an incredibly large group of Persians, led by Xerxes, to get revenge on the embarrassing defeat at the hands of the Greeks by his father, invades Greece again. This is one of the most famous battles in history. It is known as the Battle of Thermopylae, which literally translates as the Battle of the Hot Gates. This tremendously large Persian army is advancing down the coast here in red and is met by a much smaller group of Greeks led by 300 well-trained warriors from the Greek town of Sparta, as well as others. And by carefully choosing a narrow alleyway along the coast and bordered by hills and mountains, a much smaller force of Greeks is able to hold off the much larger Persian army because the vast Persian army cannot get at them. And they manage to hold them off for several days. Ultimately, according to story, a Greek trader shows the Persians a path through the mountains to get behind the Greeks, and they are able to overwhelm them and attack them from either side. However, the sacrifice of the 300 Spartans and other Greeks was not in vain. While they held off the large invading Persian army, Athens allowed itself and other towns to rally support, to gather troops and navy, and are ultimately able to defeat the Persians at a naval battle, thereby turning back the Persian advance, maintaining Greek independence, and ushering in an era of Greek, specifically Athenian, prosperity and dominance. Thank you very much.